Hello and good morning. Welcome back. Thanks for taking a little quick break with us. I just want to get you started. If you're just joining us, welcome to the first ever Wonder presented by Boston Harbor Island National and State Park. If you are here from an earlier session, welcome back. If this is you're just logging in, my name is Rebecca Smerling. I'm the Director of Programs at Boston Harbor Now. We are excited to welcome our next guests from REI. They're here to talk to us about getting outside in winter, an REI how-to guide. We're going to learn some basics for winter clothing, proper layering, and essential gear you need to have for our winter adventures in the great outdoors. I can't think of a better day to start talking about some of this. We were saying earlier in a normal year we'd be out on a harbor cruise, freezing. Today here in Boston, it's just about where I am. It's about 12 degrees, or maybe moving up a little bit. I am joined here today with we have two people from REI. We have Thor, who is Thor. Are you with us?
Hey, Rebecca, how's it going?
Good. Thor, you're here as an instructor from our local REI experiences in Southern New England, correct?
Okay, so
Oh, Andrew, you're here. Great.
all right, I'm here. Good. Okay.
Oh, good. We see you. Great. So
Okay,
I'm here.
everybody sees me.
Everyone sees you now. Hi, Andrew.
Okay.
So we have Andrew McCaughey here, who is an instructor for REI local experiences in Southern New England. For the last 3 years, Andrew has taught programs covering kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, navigation, hiking, and of course, wilderness survival throughout Massachusetts and Rhode Island. When Andrew is not outdoors for REI, he can be found honing his skills on his personal adventures or providing amazing, currently virtual trivia events. So just some tech stuff. We encourage you to send your questions throughout the presentation, either in the Q&A or directly in the chat, and we'll get to your questions. We're going to wait till the end of Andrew's presentation. And just others, if you're just joining and you'd like to see the closed captioning, that's also an option for you. And we are recording this session. So Andrew, I pass it off to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate being here. As was said, I'm an instructor with REI. All of those details are true, so I'm not going to bore you with repeating them. I'm going to go over some of the basics of dressing properly for winter activity today. As you can see, I am outside. This is not one of those fantasy backdrops that you see in Zoom a lot of the time. That is proven by the fact that I'm breathing a lot of steam. It's about 15 degrees out here. I started a little fire in the back. You can see that just a little bit. But I'm going to go over the basics of going outside, dressing for the outside, and staying warm, comfortable, and safe. So there are a few priorities that we want to focus on when dressing for winter. It isn't quite as simple as throwing on the warmest jacket that you own over a cotton t-shirt. Your goals are to minimize loss of your body heat, stop the wind, and stay dry. To that, and allow for the adjustment throughout the day, we're going to use the strategy of layering. So you're going to warm up as you go throughout the day. The weather's going to warm up. Earlier today, it was about 9 out here. Now it's closer to about 15. So how I'm going to dress, how I'm going to, adjust my layers is going to vary accordingly. The very basics of layering include 3 levels. That's the base layer, the mid layer, and then shell layers. And I'm going to get into the details of those in a few minutes. First off, I want to focus on just a little bit of science. I'm going to try and keep this from getting too clinical. I'm going to try and relate it to exactly what we're talking about here. So there are 5 mechanisms of heat loss, and by understanding them more, we can work to mitigate them. Radiation is the primary mechanism for heat loss, and that's the transfer of heat through electromagnetic waves through space. A couple of easy examples would be the sun and this campfire here that's warming up my back a little bit. It's essentially the expulsion of heat from our body or a body into the environment. You can feel that literally all the time. So The way we mitigate that is by covering ourselves up, by trapping that heat against our body. The second one is conduction. That's the process by which we lose heat through direct contact with a cold surface. This can occur when you're sitting on a cold or snow covered surface. That's why on the chair I'm sitting on right now, I have a nice cushion so I don't lose all sorts of heat by sitting in the chair comfortably. Uh, if wet clothes come in contact with your body, that's another source of conductive heat loss, or by touching cold objects with bare hands, also coming into contact with snow. I'm sure you guys have experienced this when making a snowball with bare hands, or even by, cutting up some cold meat in the kitchen. You start to feel the heat just get sucked right out of your hands. Convection is another cooking mechanism of heat loss that we can think of. That's lost due to the movement of air or liquid across your skin. Now, through radiation, our bodies are always warming a pocket of air around us. When wind strips this away, the body more quickly loses heat. So it's critical to have a wind blocking shell on a blustery day. Luckily, today, the wind is only about 3 miles an hour, which is presumably why hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Um, Evaporation. Now, that one is kind of critical to think about. They all are, but evaporation we don't think of as much when we're thinking about winter environments, because evaporation is a process in which liquid changes to vapor and then the heat from that liquid escapes into the environment. So in a cold environment, we really want to wear fabrics that breathe, because if water vapor from perspiration cannot evaporate through the clothing, it will condense, freeze, and reduce the insulation value of the clothes that we're wearing. We sweat all the time. So if we're sweating in a winter activity, say we're going skiing, this is a really easy example to conceptualize. If we're going skiing, we're doing a lot of physical activity. It's very difficult physical activity on the downhill, carving, everything like that. It takes a lot out of you. But when you get on the chairlift to go back up that mountain, you're not moving anymore. And so the heat production of your body is going to shift radically, and you're a little bit more exposed to the elements, namely the wind. So if you have broken a sweat on the way down and you're wearing improper fabrics and that moisture is trapped against your skin, it's trapped in your clothing, you're going to feel that very, very quickly. So you want to wear breathable clothing in layers that you can adjust to help prevent sweating. Respiration, that's the loss of heat through a normal breathing process. You can see that pretty readily right now, the steam escaping my mouth. That's the heat of our body lost to the environment through respiration. One of the funny things about the quarantine is, we're all wearing masks. And so to an extent, some of that respiration heat loss has been mitigated by the safety efforts that we've taken to prevent the spread of illness. Uh, Keep in mind, respiration is full of moisture, and you've all experienced this. Your masks get very, very wet very quickly, and a lot of times they can lose their insulative and protective value. So now that we've talked about the ways that our body can lose heat during winter, I want to do a little bit of show and tell. Now, layering to prevent heat loss starts with base layers. You have two primary choices when it comes to base layers. You want either synthetic fibers or natural fibers. Natural fibers being something like wool or silk. You want to avoid cotton. Cotton can absorb up to 27 times its own weight in water, which is a lot. It makes a great material for a bath towel or a beach towel because it absorbs so much water, but it's not exactly what we want as a base layer for winter survival. The key problem here is that if you sweat, all of that sweat is going to be trapped in the cotton. It's going to be absorbed. It's going to be clinging right to your body, and it might transfer some of that moisture into your other layers, reducing their heat value. Now, you can use waxed cotton. Some raincoats, like barber's raincoats, they use waxed cotton to prevent the absorption of water. But for purposes of our talk today, we're going to focus on synthetic materials and wool. Now, synthetic materials, they have a lot of pros, a couple of cons. Now, one of their biggest pros is that they wick moisture extremely well. This is an example of a synthetic long underwear top. This is made from, I think it's polypropylene. It's polypropylene. Very good, very useful, very ubiquitous material in base layers. Um, they're fantastic. They have a great insulative value, big pro. They're normally more inexpensive than you'll find the natural materials, another big pro. They're very durable. So this long underwear top that I have right here, I have probably had for about 10 or 15 years, and it has held up wonderfully. I'm actually wearing the bottoms right now because, like I said, it's 15 degrees outside. The biggest con against synthetic fabrics is smell. Uh, they will get a little funky a little bit more quickly than a lot of the other materials. The natural materials, especially wool, are odor resistant thanks to their natural composition. So plastic clothing, polypropylene clothing, synthetics, they start to get funky a little bit more quickly. So that's just something to keep aware of. Their biggest thing is they do not hold on to moisture hardly at all. They absorb almost nothing by and large. And so that's a really big plus for them. Wool is wonderful. I love wool. I'm wearing a wool mid layer right now, a wool flannel shirt over that. Wool is fantastic. These are some wool bottoms. These are from Fjallraven. These are merino wool, and this is a merino wool shirt, a base layer from Smart Wool. Absolutely fantastic stuff. There are some cons that come along with their warmth. Uh, they do absorb a little bit of moisture, but not very much at all. It's just something to keep aware of. So when you're dressing, be aware that you want to dress to be able to adjust your layers to prevent that sweating. It is a little bit more expensive, and it does take a little bit more work. And what I mean by work is mostly in the washing and upkeep to prevent degradation of these fabrics. Generally, what I'll do is I wash them on delicate with a very delicate laundry detergent, and then I air dry them. I don't put them in the dryer because you can lose some of that insulative value. You're losing fibers. When you open your dryer, you open your lint trap, that's fiber lost. And we don't want to lose fiber out of these because we want to hold on to their heat value. Another couple of things with wool that you want to keep in mind is that the natural structure of wool builds a lot of dead air into the garment, and that aids in insulation. The best insulator is air. So we want to build layers of air between us and the ambient environment. They are, in my experience, warmer. They are more comfortable thanks to the physical properties of wool. Now, merino wool and things like rag wool, they're very different. So this merino wool is extremely comfortable against your skin in a variety of climates. You can get t-shirts in this material that are very, very comfortable, very odor resistant, very good for even summer wear. I've worn Smart Wool t-shirts in the desert heat of Dubai and been exceptionally comfortable, as opposed to cotton, which, if it gets wet, even in desert heat, does take a little while to dry off. And it doesn't get that smell that plastic clothing can get. Merino wool is highly desirable and has been for a number of times. It was one of the chief exports of Spain in the 16th and 17th century, and they were pretty keen to keeping the monopoly on their trade. So it wasn't advised to steal a merino sheep. It comes in a variety of different weights, and you'll see this in the clothing, 150, 250, etc. So the smaller the number, generally the lighter the merino. So this, for instance, this is from Icebreaker. This is a 250 weight mid layer, and this is fantastically warm. It's part of the chief reason I'm able to sit out here with my jacket unzipped, rather comfortable. My small poultry fire isn't doing a lot for heat, but it helps a little bit. Merino is also useful in a very important thing that I want to show you right now that a lot of folks can occasionally neglect. Now, these are your hands and feet, and these are monumentally important. Oh, there it is. I had a base layer covering up a zipper. So hand glove liners and sock liners are, to my mind, critical pieces of equipment. These are merino wool glove liners. These are from REI. They slip right underneath your full-size gloves. And one of the great things is I lose a lot of dexterity with a glove this size, with all this leather over top of it. I lose a lot of the ability to manipulate fine objects. I can take that glove off, and now I'm not losing all of the heat that I've built up in those gloves instantly. I can also mitigate some of that conductive heat loss. So when I manipulate cold objects, I don't have direct skin contact with that. So now I have these merino wool gloves. I can use my cell phone with them. You can see they have the smartphone touch pads. Similarly, these are merino wool sock liners. These are silk sock liners. These are more for preventing blisters. These are for preventing blisters as well as keeping your feet extra toasty. They're like long johns, but for your feet. Absolutely fantastic pieces of equipment, very inexpensive. And if you're going to be spending any appreciable time outdoors, these are some of the things that are going to keep you a lot warmer than you'd think. You do lose a lot of heat out of your hands and feet, and you want to mitigate that as best you can. Another big topic that we hear talked about from time to time is mittens versus gloves. You'll notice I'm wearing gloves. It's not that cold out here. 15 degrees, no wind isn't that bad. Mittens are, however, much warmer. There's less surface area for the mitten to lose heat to the environment, whereas, as you can see, the four fingers of a glove provide a lot of surface area that heat can theoretically escape from. And the four fingers of the hand will occupy the same area, allowing them to warm each other. So when you separate your fingers, they can't really warm each other, but when they're all in the same pocket, in a mitten, they do stay a lot warmer. Now, I'm sure some of you have gotten very, very cold, even in very thick gloves, and you'll find yourself pulling the glove up so all of your hand is in the palm area, and so there's nothing in the finger zone. Everything's in the palm, and you're making a fist trying to get your hands warm. Mittens are warmer, but you're trading off with some dexterity. Now, some manufacturers have started to add a separate pocket for the index finger. So essentially, you have these three fingers and this in one pocket, this finger and the thumb separate for a little bit of dexterity, a little bit more grip. I haven't used those myself, but they do seem to be pretty practical to my eyes. You'll also see hunter's mittens, which have the flap that fold over the fingers, and then you can withdraw that. Not bad. They're generally just made of fleece, a cheaper mid-weight option if that's something you're looking for. So now that we have our hands and feet in terms of liners and gloves, I want to touch on socks. Socks are one of those things that pretty much everybody in the outdoor industry seems to collect in droves. These are 100% merino from farm to feet. I'm wearing a pair of these right now. Actually, the ones I have on are a little bit warmer. I will concede that. These are smart wool. Now, these are a blend of wool and synthetic materials. The most important thing when looking at socks, make sure there is no cotton at all in them. Every now and again, you'll find socks that say they're merino blend or an acrylic blend, and they'll have 7% cotton. But remember, cotton absorbs 27 times its own weight in water. So even that 7%, that tiny amount of cotton, can really break your foot comfort. If you are holding on to that moisture that's coming out of your feet, because your feet will sweat, they do. It's just a matter of anatomy. You want to make sure there's no cotton against your feet, either wool or synthetic, pretty much only. These I love. I love the 100% merino. I find they keep my feet a little bit warmer. These synthetic wool blends, super comfortable. So it's up to you. Remember, they come in different weights, just like base layers. So you want to make sure you're getting something that's warm enough for the activity you're doing. When you're shopping for these things, when you're kind of like looking, evaluating at what weight you might want, or when you're looking at stuff you already have, wondering how you might want to dress for the weather, think about how you operate in the weather. I run very warm. That's why I don't have my shirt buttoned all the way up. My base layer's exposed, my jacket's unzipped. I run very, very warm. Other people in my family and social circle do not. So when I try and suggest that we go outside for a nice hike on a 15-degree day or go kayaking when it's, 60 degrees outside, sometimes they don't cotton to the idea, if you'll pardon the pun, as well as I do. So preparation is key, and know yourself. If you know you're going to end up running really hot, dress for it, but accommodate it just in case you need a little bit extra. Whenever I go hiking, for instance, I always bring an extra pair of very warm socks just in case I start to get a little cold, somebody else gets a little cold, or God forbid, my feet get wet. So now that we've talked about socks, I want to touch on footwear. There's a couple of options. Now, there's insulated versus non insulated. Right now, I'm just wearing non insulated trail runners. These are my hiking boots. These are not insulated. These are just leather, partially vented hiking boots. If I'm dressing for winter, I will merino wool sock liners in a big, thick pair of winter socks. Generally, if I'm active, that's more than enough for me in weather 20 degrees or above. You want to accommodate for sedentary periods as well when you're thinking about your footwear. These boots they've seen quite a bit, and they have seen some very, very cold, very, very rugged weather, and they have held up very, very nicely. Every now and again when I'm on a class, I think to myself, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit more stationary today. I'll wear something warmer. You can get boots like this that are insulated. They generally use thin-sillet insulation. Excuse me, just checking the fire. They use thin-sillet insulation, and again, you can see how much is in the boot in terms of the number. It's a weight. So the lower the number, the less insulation, the higher number, the more insulation that you'll see. So, if it says 200, it's generally a little bit lighter, 600, a little bit heavier. The other family of boot that we're going to cover, we're not going to go into the super high mountaineering boot because we don't really need those in the Boston Harbor area. We only have a few elevation gain areas, such as, over on Blue Hill. But there are boots such as this, I'm sure you guys have all seen, that have a removable liner. Now, the big advantage of this is that if this gets wet, I can dry it very easily. I can, stick it on a boot dryer, take it out, warm it by a fire. These are much, much warmer. This is a rubber and leather boot, so it's already pretty warm. With that extra liner, they get even warmer still. So the 2-layer boot with a removable liner is great to have in winter. Very, very handy. I did take notes because I didn't want to forget anything. So now that we've gone over boots, feet, etc., we want to go on to mid layers. This might have the greatest diversity. They fill the gap between the base layers and your shells. And like I said, the greatest insulator is air. So the mid layers are really about building that air barrier between you and the environment. Goose down is honestly one of the best insulators you're going to find for weight. It performs very poorly when wet, and it is kind of expensive. So what happens is you have these fine feathers, these pin feathers, and so they fan out like this when they're dry, and that captures a lot of air, therefore a lot of heat. But when they get wet, they all collapse into each other and stick together. That is going to curtail their insulative value. It's going to hurt you a little bit. Fleece pullovers, sweaters, down or synthetic puffs, vests, wool shirts. These are all examples of mid-layer. So quite frankly, this synthetic puff that I'm wearing right now, that's considered a mid-layer because this is not a weather-resistant outer shell. It's a little bit wind-resistant, but has almost no water resistance. This wool shirt, that's an example of a mid-layer. Some other examples include things like fleece bottoms. These are super basic, super durable. Again, these I've had for a very long time. I've probably had these for close to, I think, 15 or 16 years, probably about that long. I was still in high school when I had these, and these have kept me warm on many a winter camping trip. Fleece is great. Fleece is inexpensive. It's durable. This is just a fleece quarter zip. They're very, very warm. They have a great insulative value. They're not all that expensive, and they're something good to have on hand. This one is one of my favorites, though. This is just a fleece vest. Now, a lot of folks in my industry have very nice down or synthetic vests, but this one I got as a gift from a cousin of mine, and I never wore it because I thought to myself, I'm not really a vest guy, but I never wanted to get rid of it because it was a nice vest, and I figured at some point I'd want it for something. It sat in my closet for 8 years. When I finally put it on, I found a $20 bill in the pocket that my cousin had given me for my birthday that had been sitting there for 8 years. So when I finally call to thank her for it, it was a bit of a laugh on both our parts. With those vests, you're able to keep the heat in your core area contained very, very well, while giving your extremities all the room they need to do things like this. Not that you necessarily have to, but it is a good option to have. These mid layers, you don't want to forget your legs, principally. So there's a joke that one of my coworkers has shared with me. It's a little cartoon, why am I cold? And it shows somebody with 17 jackets on, but they only have a pair of light trekking pants on. Don't forget your legs. Wear your long underwear base layers. If it's going to be extremely cold and you feel as though you need them, throw on a pair of fleece mid layers between, say, your long underwear and your pants. These are basic trekking pants. These don't really provide a great deal of water resistance or wind resistance, but they are synthetic, so they are quick dry, and they're very comfortable. They have a lot of durability, but if you want something for warmth, you're going to have to plan a little more strongly. So now that we've got our mid layers, fleece, more wool, puffs like this one. Puffs are just known because they are a little bit more voluminous in their appearance, like a down jacket. We want to get into shells. The shell is designed to stop wind and water from penetrating to your mid layers and your base layers. And there are a couple options here, both in terms of weight and materials. Now, you think of the heavy duty winter parka with the Gore-Tex shell and, a lot of down. These are great. These are very, very warm. For my purposes, I honestly find one of them that I have to be too warm. It's my warmest jacket, and I almost never wear it because if I'm moving, I get too hot and I can't adjust that heat very well. So rather than wearing that, I generally opt for a lighter shell personally. Now, there are a couple options. Your hard shell is completely waterproof, and then a soft shell is generally water resistant. This is something like a nylon or a coated nylon. Now, if it's a soft shell, it's not going to be waterproof. That's just how it is. They might be fleece lined though, so there's a little extra insulation there. The hard shell offers more substantive protection, and that is something like this. This is a Gore-Tex jacket. Pretty much any brand of Gore-Tex is going to give you similar protection. Gore-Tex is a trademarked material invented by a man named Robert Gore, who had a bit of a temper tantrum when working with some synthetic materials. And rather than gradually pulling the fiber apart like he had been trying to, it kept breaking when he did that. He got very angry and just yanked it. And he accidentally created one of the greatest waterproof fabrics that we have, all because he got frustrated. So don't let anybody tell you that your temper gets you nowhere. That's great. That is very breathable, which is critical. Super waterproof, which is fantastic. And it's a pretty durable material. An alternative to Gore-Tex would be something along the lines of a coated nylon like this. The problem with coated nylon is that the coating comes off. It wears away gradually over time, and you're going to have to reapply it. These I do like still. These are pretty old, and eventually they'll have to be replaced. But one of the big things I like about these is the adjustable zipper. These are just my rain pants that I use, but they are considered a hard shell. These zip up 3/4 of the way up the pant. The reason I like that is because if it starts raining or snowing and I don't have my shell on, I don't want to have to take off my boots to put them on. Quarter zip pants for somebody like me who has a size 12 foot, I can't really get those pants over my boots quickly and easily. Those with the 3/4 zipper, I can maneuver very, very quickly. And that's been a game changer in a couple of areas where I've been up at altitude over tree line and a cold rain has started to come in. I like those a lot. Something heavier than those, another hard shell, would be something more like these. These are ski pants. These are lined with Thinsulate, very, very durable outer coated nylon shell. They're not designed to be used in the rain, so I don't find that to be too problematic. The nice thing here is that the liner extends down. This seals over my boots, and then this drops down over top of them, pretty much sealing my legs and feet from the snow. So when I'm going into deep snow, I'm not going to get a boot full of snow and then have very, very freezing feet for the rest of the day. I was taught a long time ago, when we go out into the weather, do not tuck your pants into your boots generally, because A, we are not paratroopers in World War II, and B, if you tuck your pants into your boots, you may create an opportunity for snow to get into your footwear. That's a lot of water, that's a lot of cold, and that's a lot of problem for you that you don't want to have to deal with. So this is something that's more along the lines of a soft shell. This is just essentially a windbreaker. A lot of soft shells would be something like this with a fleece liner inside. Quite frankly, a soft shell with a fleece liner, it's great for throwing on for, taking the dog for a walk or something like that. I prefer the option to have many lighter layers. So if I want to take off that fleece layer, I have this that I can take off and then I can reapply my shell. Another small tip that I have for you that I took into account with my Gore-Tex jacket. Gore-Tex is not inexpensive. Those jackets can, run up a couple $100. I ended up getting one that was a size big for me. I wear a large generally. I bought an extra large for that because I wanted to be able to layer beneath it. I bought that jacket specifically for a high altitude trip, and I wanted that as a shell. I was climbing a very tall mountain, and it had a lot of different climate areas. So there was desert, jungle, kind of a temperate forest area, and then glaciers up at the top. And I wanted stuff that I could use for the bulk of the trip. So, for instance, I had that jacket that I could use for rain down at the base, and that I could use as a shell up at the top on the glaciers and layer beneath. And that worked out very, very well for me. Those are pretty much the bulk of what we want to focus on for layers. You don't want to forget about something very important that you can see on me right now. Don't forget a hat. A hat is very, very critical. A huge amount of the blood flow in our bodies accounted for by our brains. And a lot of that blood comes through our neck, which is why a scarf or a gaiter is also a good idea. But a lot of the blood is being used by our brain, creating a very vascular situation where a lot of blood is very, very close to the skin. Now, if you have a lot of blood moving close to the skin, it almost works like a radiator in your car does. Huge amount of surface area, rapidly moving hot fluids, cold outer environment. We don't want to lose that heat. We are not a radiator. We don't need one. We don't need to shed that heat by and large. So if you keep a nice hat on, you're going to end up staying a lot warmer for a lot longer. This obviously might not be the fashion choice you're going for. That's fine. People look at me and say there's no accounting for taste. So I understand where you're coming from. You can also get acrylic or wool hats, simple beanies that pull over. I'm sure you guys have something that you've had for a long time. Just don't forget it when you're going out into the cold. It's very important. That is just about it for layering. But before I open everything up and I start addressing questions, I do want to cover what we call some of our essential items that we bring with us when we go hiking or into the backcountry for some of these adventures. That would include navigational aids. So luckily, I have almost everything I need right here in my handy dandy duffel bag. Navigational aids would be things like a map and a compass. One of the very important things with a map and a compass is that you want to be able to know how to use them. So be sure you know how to use these instead of just throwing them in your backpack and assuming that you'll figure it out on the fly. It can be a little challenging. I teach navigation and it's still a little challenging sometimes. Excuse me. So just be careful. This is a bag I always put into every backpack I'm going out with. If I'm going for a 10-day camping trip or if I'm going for a day hike, this always goes with me. In here, I have a number of things, including this is my fire kit. It's just a piece of inner tube with some stuff I need to start a fire. There's wood shavings and lint, as well as waterproof matches. The reason I have waterproof matches, even though it's a waterproof bag, I can be a little paranoid from time to time. Having tinder with you, something that can catch a match and very easily light, is important because you don't want to have to stop and make that stuff if you really need to start a fire. The more stuff you have prepared, the better off you're going to be. Fire starter and matches are very, very critical. In here, I also have first aid supplies. I have a couple of different bags for different things. I have a blister kit just in case. That's a very, very common injury when you're hiking. Also have gauze, band-aids, a little drug kit which has ibuprofen, Benadryl, and a few other little necessities in there just in case you need them as you go. I also always carry toilet paper. If you're going on a very long hike, it's a good idea to bring. A knife is always a good thing to have on you. These are things I just carry with me throughout the day. And also either a headlamp or a flashlight. These are two things that I always have on me. They are exceedingly useful. More so than you might think. A lot of people, when I started carrying a flashlight 10 years ago, were like, Andrew, why are you carrying a flashlight everywhere? And the most interesting instance where that question was answered very quickly without me having to say anything was when someone came over to our table and asked us to help them find their engagement ring, and everybody was using their cell phones, which don't offer a very sharp light, and we found it in about 30 seconds using a flashlight. Very important. If you lose something, they're very, very useful, especially if you end up in a night hiking situation when you didn't maybe intend to be in a night hiking situation. Also, you should always have extra clothing with you. Like I said, I always have extra socks. You want to prepare for the worst, so have some of this stuff with you, and some extra food. If I'm going for a hike, I usually bring enough for myself and one other person because invariably somebody will forget that they need to bring food. Granola bars, jerky, peanut butter crackers, anything like that. Something with some calories in it that'll fuel you quickly. But that's pretty much it for our essentials. Thank you all for joining me in this presentation. I know there's a lot of information over today and tomorrow, and I hope you got a lot out of this. If you're interested in learning more about this, check out rei.com/events for a full lineup of our upcoming programming. We have a number of classes that cover a wide range of topics, and we'd be happy to have you along. And if you sign up for a lot of those classes, chances are you'll end up seeing me again. So be either wary or look forward to that. It's really up to you. So we've got a little bit of time for questions, and let's see some of those.
Hi, Andrew. I'm back here. How are you? Thank you so much. This was so informative. I've been sitting here feverishly taking notes, realizing I've been dressing my kids completely wrong for the last week. So super helpful. Baseline, no cotton. That has been probably my biggest mistake, I'm sure, for others often. I do have a number of questions, so if you'll bear with us.
Sure.
I did have a question here is, what do you think about the hot hands and the toe warmer pads? Sort of those things that get heated up.
They're wonderful. They've started making them in biodegradable manufacturing as well. The Grabber hot hands I like a lot. I find them to be a really good brand. They're made in America. They're fantastic. They can be a really big aid, especially if you run cold or if you're going to be outside and be a little bit more sedentary. If you're going to a sports game, in the before time, or if you're, going ice fishing, anything where you're going to be a little bit more sedentary, they can really give you that extra boost that you might need for comfort. And they're very light. They're air activated. So when you open them, don't put them right into your gloves or feet. Give them a little bit of a shake to get everything jostled around, increase that surface area, and activate the chemicals in them that create that warmth. But yeah, no, they're really good. I generally keep a pair in my backpack, and for REI, we bring them with us on every outdoor event in the winter because they do help a lot.
Well, that's helpful. Thanks. Do you have recommendations for people who get very cold toes while they're downhill skiing in particular?
Yes. So a number of things can cause that. I have a good friend who has Raynaud's, and that is a circulation condition that can actually cause your extremities to get very, very cold, almost bleach white skin. The hand warmers and feet warmers are great for those. Another big thing you might want to focus on is getting a custom fit boot or something with because the reason I say that is because if your boots are too tight, it's going to restrict blood movement. And if that ends up happening, you're not going to have warm feet. So if you're downhill skiing and your boots are too tight, if say you're renting boots and they end up fitting too tightly, they're going to end up causing more problems than they're solving. So it might be worth the investment to get something a little bit more custom fit, but definitely feet warmers and really good socks. They make a huge difference.
That's helpful. Thanks. Um, so I have a question of any alternative recommendations for those people who prefer not to wear wool?
Yeah, yeah. So synthetics are a great alternative. Synthetic materials have come an enormous way over the last few decades. I remember when I was a Boy Scout wearing the horrible polyester uniforms that they gave us. They were awful. They were terribly uncomfortable. They did not breathe at all. But now the stuff that we're using includes things like these, and these are synthetic base layers that I have that are absolutely fantastic. They hold up very, very well. Honestly, the only strike against synthetics for the most part is the odor issue. But if you're only wearing it for one day, that's not a huge deal. But when you're doing like a multi-day trip, it's going to hold on to whatever funk you create. So you just want to be careful about that. I will say this in defense of wool is that the merino wool we use today is a far cry from the itchy rag wool that you might be used to. It's very, very soft. They make t-shirts out of it. They make underwear out of it. There's actually a pair of boxer briefs from Smartwool that are incredibly comfortable and they hold up super, super well. If you are adamantly opposed to wool, adamantly opposed, you never want to use it, synthetics are perfectly fine. And there's a lot out there that's really, really, really good. But also maybe give it a try. I mean, if you have an allergy, I understand, there's not a lot can be done about that. But you can try out merino wool just once. You might be a convert. The synthetic stuff is great though. And you can get a lot of synthetic socks. But many, many socks do have a small merino component in them, but you can't really tell.
No, that's helpful. I know that recently I got a merino wool sleep sack for my infant who, isn't quite old enough for a blanket, and he seems pretty warm at night, so that's great.
Oh yeah, they're very, very, very toasty.
Yeah. Just a compliment from the audience of this is a great session for both new and experienced outdoors. There was a question for a recommendation for people who are looking for new gear who are on a limited budget. Sort of like, if you're on a limited budget, like what's your must have? And maybe places where you might be able to find some budget stuff.
So obviously, I mean, I'm a little biased with REI. One of the main ways that I actually get my gear at REI is I hunt the sales and the returns. So since quarantine, most of the stores have done away with the yard sale that they used to have, which was a little bit of a frenzy at times. And now they actually have a yard sale at corner in most of the stores. And I've actually picked up some gear there at a very, very reasonable price.
Noted.
Don't be afraid to buy used because once something is made, it's made. And I know a lot of us are thinking more ecologically sound in our decision-making paradigms. If it's made, the damage is done. Give it more life. So if you're looking for something, check out Facebook Marketplace, check out Craigslist, ask your friends. There might be pieces of gear that you might need for a weekend. Don't be afraid to ask people like me who have a ton of gear to borrow something. If you need a sleeping bag, ask people like us, because I'm sure you have some friend out there who's sitting in a backyard wearing a fur hat, being a lunatic, who has plenty of gear that you can borrow. Just be considerate and return it in working order. I had somebody break a tent once and I've never quite forgiven them.
We all have that friend.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to buy used. There's a lot of value in a lot of these things, and they're built to last. They're built to last a long time. I mean, this shirt I've had this shirt for I think 8 or 9 years, and it's got plenty of life left in it. And there might be people who they see something like this and they love it now, But in 3 years, they might be thinking, it's not really my style anymore, and they sell it. So check out the used sources for gear. REI returns are great, any kind of return shopping, and keep an eye on sales. Um, the secret is time. You know, if you want something right now, you're going to pay for it. If you make a list of things that you want, and then you just kind of scan the sales regularly, or you scan the used sections regularly, you're going to find what you want at a decent price. Just be patient.
That's great. Thanks for that tip. Speaking of your plaid, we did have a question actually about plaid. What are your thoughts on plaid for both heat, not necessarily fashion?
Uh,
Although,
in terms,
totally.
like in terms of this shirt, I cannot wear this shirt unless it's below 50 degrees outside. And at that, I will wear it almost as a jacket. I'll throw a cotton t-shirt on underneath it. This is a little bit more itchy. This is that rag wool. There's nothing wrong with like a flannel shirt to keep warm. If you're taking the dog for a walk, you're going to be outside for 45 minutes tops, and a little bit of cotton there. It's not a big deal as long as you check the weather report ahead. When I say no cotton as a hard and fast rule, that's for longer term stuff. If you're going to be out for the full day, sorry, but no cotton. Try and avoid it on your feet throughout, because it will absorb a lot of water. I mean, my brother came over yesterday. We walked the dog. We were out for about 45 minutes. His feet were cold because he was wearing cotton socks. My feet were warm because I was wearing wool socks. Flannel is fine. Flannel is a great source of heat. I mean, cotton is a very warm fabric until it gets wet. So as long as you're wearing it in an environment where you're going to stay dry, or you're not being very, very active, cotton's okay. This shirt here, wool, so I use it a little bit more, a little bit more as like a mid layer.
Great, thank you. Speaking of dogs, there was a question here. Anything we should keep in mind for our furry friends when taking our dogs out for a longer, than just their normal walk?
So you might have heard some barking earlier. That was my dog chasing a squirrel. She's currently laying down in front of the house on a piece of grass because it's a little bit warmer. When the biggest things to keep in mind are their feet. Iditarod dogs wear booties because they're going to be out for so long and it is very, very cold. But dogs, depending on the breed, they have winter coats, so they're gonna stay warm. So it's very dependent on how your dog does in the winter. If you have a husky or a Malamute or even a golden retriever, a big furry dog, they want to be out in the cold. They want to be out in the snow. They love it. But their feet are something to keep an eye on, especially if you're walking them on pavement, because a lot of that rock salt and that sand that goes on the road can be deleterious to their pads. So you want to be careful with that. If you have a dog like a pit mix or anything with very short hair, greyhounds, smaller dogs, they have a greater difficulty maintaining homeostasis because they don't have that insulation that we do and that we can add. So if you see greyhounds walking around, or greyhounds after a race, they would wear jackets or sweaters to keep them warm. They shed heat very, very quickly. In some cases, they were bred for that. Italian greyhounds were bred to put out a huge amount of heat. They almost have no insulation. They kick out all their heat into the environment because they were bred to keep aristocrats warm. So just be aware of what your dog's tolerances are and be very, very careful about that. And then if you're going to be doing long walks, maybe consider getting some shoes for them.
That's great. That's super helpful. Just a question about the sun in the winter. Should we be wearing sunscreen?
Yes, that's actually one thing, because my notes are down there. I actually missed them. Sunscreen is very important. Sunglasses are hugely important. All of this sun reflects off the snow. So I don't know if anybody's been outside at night in the last few days. It has been beautiful and incredibly bright, and it's a huge indicator of how reflective the surface of the earth is. And so eyes are a big thing to focus on. A little bit of sunscreen is fine. Lip balm is very great for preventing the chap and also preventing sunburn. a lot of the polar explorers, they would actually take pieces of seal or whale bone and cut narrow slits in it for eye protection to prevent snow blindness. And this is before sunglasses were widely available. The sun can be very, very dangerous uh, in in the winter, so just be aware of that. The sun is kicking out plenty of UV rays right now. I'm in the shade, so I'm a little cooler, but there is that fact that, yeah, you do want to be wearing a little bit of sunscreen. Definitely protect your eyes,
Mm.
because I mean, let's face it, I don't have a lot of exposed skin right now. It's literally just my face. And when I put on my sunglasses, the only parts of my body that are exposed to the sun are like here and here. That's it, because I've got SPF beard.
Actually, we had a question about the beard. Do beards actually keep you warmer?
Yeah, yeah, they do. The funny thing is, I notice it most in the summer, so I have to trim it down in the summer so I don't boil to death. But yeah, beards do keep you a little bit warmer. I used to work at Roger Williams Park Zoo, and we did a little experiment about what would keep you warmest: fur, feathers, or fat. And feathers, depending on how packed they are, they do keep you warmer. Goose down, very, very warm. Fur does also keep you warm, but fat's the best actually, which is why polar bears have that nice layer of blubber, and as do whales. But yeah, this does keep me warm. It is pretty long though. I mean, I'll give you the profile. Yeah, there's a little bit of bushiness.
Great. Um, just a question on hydration in this for when you're outside. Some people may not think about staying hydrated.
Very common.
Yeah. Talk if you could just talk about tips for carrying water. I mean, it's not quite. Is it the same as the middle of the summer?
No, no, it's not. So a lot of people use camelbacks, and as do I. Hydration packs are fantastic. They have added a layer of ability to hydrate actively that we didn't have before. I mean, you look at guys hiking in the 70s, they were all carrying, old military surplus canteens, and now we have water on our back that we can just drink out of a straw at any time. It's fantastic, except those freeze. You can get insulated hoses, which add about 15 degrees of use, but you have to drink out of them constantly to prevent them from freezing. And once you get below about 20 degrees, you're almost guaranteed, even with an insulated hose, even with regular drinking, that it's going to freeze eventually. I carry a Nalgene, at least one with me whenever I'm winter hiking. And when you're carrying this, carry it like this. Water freezes from the top down. If I carried it right side up, this would freeze first. I wouldn't be able to access this water. But if I store it upside down, it's going to freeze here first.
Huh.
You do want to hydrate. You are losing a lot of moisture. And a lot of people, because we don't think of it quite the same way in the winter, you're exactly right. A lot of folks, they just don't think about water. And you still need a lot of it. You're still using a lot of it as you go. So yeah, you definitely want to stay hydrated. Now I'm thirsty, now that you've said that. So your psychological experiment has succeeded.
I know, me too. I've got my water handy. So there are still many questions, but I want to make sure we give some time for a bio break before our next session and keeping us all on track. I want to thank you so much for your time. And I think we're all pretty inspired by you being outside. I am like thinking about my layers and seeing if I can at least get outside for a little bit today. We're going to keep answering the questions. Either your colleague from REI, Thor is going to just continue typing them into the Q&A if there are other questions that didn't get answered, and we will see you, we hear you, we want to answer them, but I do want to keep us on track. I know REI has some both live and virtual programming that on these topics that people can take advantage of, so go visit their website. And Boston Harbor Now is also going to be offering some in-person programming later in February, including an ocean therapy walk, to do a mini forest bathing at Webb State Park, as well as our winter running club in Charlestown, downtown, and South Boston. So take advantage. We are still gathering. People should be outside. I know we're all kind of looking forward to this nor'easter coming. Go snowshoeing, go skiing, go hiking. Those are all great for all of us. So I want to just thank Thank you so much, Andrew. This was so informative, even for all for some of us who do go outside. We're going to take just a brief break. Our next presentation is Science Together, researching the Boston Harbor Islands with community and citizen science. And we hope to see you back in just a few minutes, but take a quick bio break. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Andrew.